coming. Welcome to the Hermosa Beach Museum. Good to see some familiar faces and good to see some new ones. Thank you for coming. Glad you found us. We are a private nonprofit, so if you are open to donating, it's always appreciated. It keeps us running as we are not to be separate from the city itself and doing all of these wonderful changes that we see, managing the collections and keeping local history education moving in South Bay. So please consider that if you can. But what we're here for tonight, after hours for the Hermosa Beach Review highlights. So this is the local paper that ran from 1907 to 1979. It's an incredible source for local history education, and it's one that has recently been digitized thanks to UC Riverside, and is available now at newspapers.com if you have a subscription, or if you don't and you're interested in checking it out, you can come join us at the museum anytime, put in a research request, and be able to access those yourself. So tonight, myself and the Program Education Manager Ryan Basford, Amar Lee, our great registrar, Jamie Erickson, our Director and Curator, Laura Garber, an easy reader reporter here for a journalistic angle, and Mark Shoemaker, one of our board members and local historian in his own right, are here to talk about some of our favorite things that we've encountered or ways that we've used this resource since it's been digitized about 6 to 8 months ago. Before I get too far into that, our next event I do have to tell you about. I'm really excited. It's a We Got Power punk panel discussion. So that's the panel of the minds behind We Got Power, a fanzine of the 80s. That's going to include guitarist of the Misfits, Des Cadena, Janet Houston, who was a drummer for Red Cross, among other things, Dave Markey and Jordan Schwartz, who are the authors of that fanzine, and a book that's available here and will be available that evening. And photographer Kevin Salt will moderate that discussion. So that's going to be next Thursday, the 29th, 6 to 8 p.m. Hope to see you all there. Should be a great night. And check online this weekend for our February lineup as well. We've got a ton of exciting things coming up in the new year, so very excited to do that with you. Before I really get kicked off, I also want to ask, we've got 5 speakers, so we've got a packed house not only back there, but up here tonight. So please hold all questions to the end so that we can get through this efficiently and get those stories out to you. So I want to kick us off, if I can. There you go. Excuse our new setup here. We're making some new changes in the year, as you can see, with our pirate rigging throughout. That'll be cleaned up over time, and bear with us through the changes. In any case, I wanted to start us off with Prohibition. So the early 20th century is one of my favorite eras to look at. It's a time when the nation is defining itself, and it's a time when Hermosa is defining itself as well. So the paper being digitized has given us a great opportunity to look at how Hermosa residents understand Prohibition. The value of local history to me and to historians is using small-scale local sources to either challenge, support, add to, or nuance existing narratives that are out there in scholarship. So many have written about national prohibition, about Al Smith in New York tapping into ethnic communities in New York and Chicago to reorient the Democratic Party around working class bases of Irish, Polish, German, and other European immigrants. But significantly fewer have looked at what that looks like in beach cities and beach culture. So as I said, locally, Hermosa was trying to decide between a pleasure pier model for its beach or the aristocrat of the California beaches, as they called themselves in the early years, trying to decide between those models, and for that reason they were dry from their inception in 1907, all the way to the end of Prohibition. Nationally, meanwhile, and this is going to intersect with the local, progressivism, industrialism, Protestantism, and Americanism would intersect to create Prohibition. It's an interesting intersection of progressivism and industrialism, often at odds about labor, but the progressives were taking up that sort of Protestant work ethic, morality angle and saying it's good for everyone not to be drinking. This is a moral imperative. Industrialists and capitalists like Henry Ford, meanwhile, were saying, we would like our workers to be sober. So that leads to, so that confluence leads to Prohibition in part, and Americanism as well, as I mentioned, tension over all the European communities, or immigrant communities, I should say, European American communities in Chicago, New York, and other big cities. What's interesting here is we get to see these stories, many vital issues on election ballots from 1926, of how Hermosa, the editor of the Hermosa Beach Review, responded to these changes, what they thought of it, how it impacted local culture. So I won't bore you, we're just looking at a brief overview for tonight. I won't bore you with all of the votes, but suffice to say that from 1916 to 1926, Hermosa's population grows from about 1,200 to about 3,000. And consistently they vote about 2/3 in favor of prohibition, 1/3 against. The California vote, meanwhile, is consistently about 50-50 and flips in 1926, flips in 1926 to want to keep the Right Act. The Right Act was just California's state level enforcement, local police enforcement, rather than just federal enforcement of prohibition. What's interesting in the local little bit of culture and color we get from the Hermosa Review being digitized is this: Hermosa residents in Big Dry Parade. So we get to know now it's not just that they voted that way, but that they had a large parade actually. And that parade was complete with a 30-foot banner reading, "Hermosa has always been dry, Hermosa always will be dry." So we can see it. They were genuinely passionate about this issue. It also includes many jabs at Redondo Beach and a celebration when Redondo finally voted out John Barleycorn, as the liquor was called. Exactly, the personification of liquor himself. By 1932, however, this flips, with Hermosa now with a population of about 5,000, voting in favor of getting rid of prohibition by a 62% to 38% margin. Population is growing. The state as a whole overwhelmingly votes in favor of getting rid of prohibition restrictions at the state level. And what changed? At the state level, what changed is the Great Depression and people saying, wow, we really would benefit from our grape and hop and wine industries doing well again. In Hermosa, what changed as the population, 1,000 to 5,000, whole lot more middle-class workers working at the oil plant up in Escondido or commuting to LA. And we see that come out in editorial opinions in the paper. The paper is very much, at this time the editor is very much in favor of prohibition. You see this in 1926, wrong on the Right Act. This paper is bone dry on the prohibition question, arguing that the repeal of that would just increase crime and bootlegging. And the counters to that, of course, would be it's unequally enforced across the board and across communities. It's a waste of money to support ineffective laws, and that they should be federal laws to federal officers. By another paper in 1926 says effectively that same argument. And then in 1932, the editor expresses their shock that the city has flipped not only on the Right Act, which locally was in one of the surprises of the election, but surprised that the city, normally Republican, jumps on the bandwagon with Democrats. So the city votes for FDR, and they were surprised at this, much more expecting them to vote for the incumbent Hoover. And that just shows the impact of the Great Depression, where Hoover was very unpopular because he failed to stop or curtail the Great Depression early on. FDR was offering a change. Some cartoons can color as well, a favorite of high school history teachers everywhere, but fun to look at nonetheless. Here we've got 1916, when they're very, very proud and taking jabs at Redondo for still being wet, and they are dry early on, of this gentleman hanging on as I can assume the world spins around him. It's captioned, exercising his personal liberty in accordance with the wet idea. So taking a stab at it there. And this one, which is a personal favorite of mine, which because of the editor's feelings, I would imagine that it's meant to be an anti-prohibition cartoon. You can see Uncle Sam here with a shotgun and a little bottle labeled hooch down there hiding under a blanket. But I can't read this as anything other than being against prohibition. I feel bad. Look at the little fella. He looks so nice. I can't find a hooch. You gotta support him. I bought a bottle myself tonight just to help him out. Look at him. In any case, so point being, interesting to be able to see the culture as it was felt by the people at the time. And finally, moonshiners, bootleggers, and bribes. I put this up. I won't read through everything. They found the largest still in Monterey. It was capable of processing a huge amount. They tapped directly into the water district's piping in order to run it. Authorities were shocked that the neighbors weren't telling anyone that it happened. I can imagine why. In the middle, we've got a couple stories of officers going in plainclothes and using marked bills in order to fool bootleggers and buy liquor from them, catch them in the act. And by the end, 3 officers are out of jobs as they have been found to be taking bribes and kicking fishermen off the pier so that they could drive a truck to the end of it and pick up booze from a passing ship. I say all of this to say that you could be forgiven for imagining a lack of bootlegging or lack of drinking in Hermosa because of how strong the dry vote was through 1926, but clearly they had the same enforcement issues as everywhere else. Over time, you see them fall in line with the rest of California as the population grows, becomes more middle class, and as the beach becomes more multi-use rather than just the sort of resort upper class area. So I hope you enjoyed that. Next up is our fabulous registrar, Amara Lee, who's going to be talking about Japanese flower growers and what she's able to find about them in the paper. Thank you.
My presentation is on Japanese flower growers and the genealogical research on the Nayano family. My story really begins with the city directory from 1927, where I found an ad for Hermosa Flores, which was owned by Yukichi Mayano. Yukichi and his wife Noda came to Hermosa Beach and were sponsored as educators to come and teach the Japanese language. Before I dig further into their family, I wanted to give some context about Japanese immigration. The first wave of Japanese immigrants came to Hawaii and California in the late 1800s. Many of them joined the cultivation and industrial industry, where they worked as farmers and laborers. They were more in San Francisco, and this is when they planted flower farms all throughout California. In his newspaper article from 1920, this talks about the increase of the Japanese immigrants increasing to 16,000. But during this era, there was over 100,000 Japanese that came to the US. Later on, they shifted to Southern California for greater economic opportunities, especially in LA County. If you're familiar with the Los Angeles Flower Market in downtown LA, Japanese and European immigrants had a community over there. In the South Bay, many of the Japanese families planted their own flower farms where they cut and distribute the flowers. Hermosa Flores was located on 861 Camino Real. The permit was approved by E.C. Hudson in 1925, and it costed $12.50 to build. You can see an ad below of Hermosa Flores, which was similar to the ad in the city directory. On my right is a photograph of an aerial from 1924. On the street right here is PCH, where you can see the trees lined up. This was around 22nd Street. I believe that this is just to give some perspective from the sand dunes and the rolling hills. Ikichi and Noda were both educators, and Noda taught at the Japanese Cultural Center that was located on 8th Street. You can see in this photograph that was donated by their granddaughter, Jane Miho, who I met later last week, provided this photograph. Yukichi is located on the left with his wife Noda and holding their daughter Hisako Ruth and their son John Yasuo. You can see their family car in the background, where they used it to deliver flowers to nearby South Bay cities. This is also their original house. The family can be found in 195 articles in the Hermosa Beach Review. They are also in many other Asian American newspapers, such as Pacific Citizens and Japanese American News. They were very active in the local community. John and Hisako were popular tennis players. Hisako was one of the founding members of the Garden Club. She was also the chief of the city's park commission. Both John and Hisako eventually joined the Chamber of Commerce at some time. They also had a younger sister. Her name was Lily. She did an oral history in 1979, where she talked about her childhood before the war broke out. She talked about what it was like in Hermosa Beach, her school life, her peers, and their return to California. So, when go back to my slide. I had so much fun researching about the family, and it was all because newspapers.com, and I also use Ancestry. I also got to meet Jane, which was really fun to hear about her family story, and her Aunt Lily is actually alive at 102 years old. I know there are so many other Japanese in the South Bay community, and this is just one of them. So I hope in the future that we can expand on their stories and learn about their history. I'm going to pass it over to Jamie.
Do I click the slide here? Okay, good. Thank you so much, Mara. Thank you, Ryan. This is kind of hard to follow. I'm talking about animals. So anybody who knows me knows I'm a big dog enthusiast, so I have a couple dog stories that I thought would be fun to share, and a horse story. So the first one is actually about Chief Barney Hibbets, animal rescuer extraordinaire. I think a lot of people have foster dogs, rescue dogs. I had no idea there were people with this passion going back this far. So in 2020, I did an online exhibit for the Hermosa Beach Fire Department, and then we did an in-person one in 2025. And I learned a little bit about Barney kind of from the city employee perspective. So he was the chief from 1924 to 1932. And at that time, I mean, a lot of city jobs are still kind of catch-all positions, but it was truly a catch-all position. He did city drills. He drove the engine, as you see him there in the photo. He maintained the city's sewer pumps. He did building maintenance. He worked the police front desk during the day, and he was paid $1 for every emergency call he responded to. God bless him. He also, in his spare time, and he had a wife and family, and then in his spare time was an animal rescuer. After we did the online exhibit, the paper was digitized, so I went back through and found all kinds of new stuff I had no idea about in regards to this person. There were countless articles about him finding dogs, taking them in, putting articles in the paper that, hey, there's a lost dog, is this your dog? Or, hey, I have this really great dog that needs a home, does anybody need a dog? There's an article there about a collie dog in 1932. Napoleon was kind of a fun one. There was one day where he got a call because after doing this for so many years, he became known as the guy you call when you find a dog. I mean, we should add that onto his official city description, probably. And there was a turtle headed down Hermosa Avenue in oncoming traffic, and he saved the turtle, picked it up, put an article in the paper. They were trying to figure out, who was the owner. I don't know how many people in 1932 out here had pet turtles. And they did eventually find the owner. The turtle's name was Napoleon. So he was his own, individual person, I guess. So in this photo, you actually see him on one of the fire engines in front of the old station, and this was his dog, Blackie. At that time, he was living in the station, and this photo is actually courtesy of the Moss family. If you guys know Sam Moss, he's a local from in town, and that family was related to him. And what's kind of interesting is that his mom, Sam's mom, Kathy, actually remembers her mom talking about living in the station with her dad when he was a little girl. But he was definitely a big fan. He had several German Shepherds over his lifetime. I thought I'd share some fun facts about German Shepherds in case you guys didn't know this about me. I am the girl that will watch the full 8-hour cut of the AKC Dog Show. So at the time when German Shepherds came into being, grazing land was becoming a little scarce in modern Germany, and they kind of created the German Shepherd to bridge the gap, between going from, farming culture to more city and hunting, and this was just before World War I. They became popular, of course. A lot of people here will know Rin Tin Tin and Strongheart, kind of notable film dogs that became really popular celebrity personalities. After World War I, they came home with a lot of the GIs, and they were noted as being beautiful, intelligent, great working dogs that were also good at home for protection and to be with your kids, of course. As a result, they got a little overbred at factories, and as you find in a lot of the newspapers from the Hermosa Review, they call them police dogs, so their popularity declined. They came into popularity again after World War II, especially as working dog, for landmines, police, sniffing, tracking, all of these things. And new breeding lines actually became popular because during World War II, a lot of them were decimated in Germany, so the few people that had these dogs started sending them out to try to save the breed. There was a lack of food and a lot of them died, and then as a result there was a huge boom in America. I know my parents would talk about several friends whose parents bought dogs from Germany because it was considered a really affluent thing to do, and they were very popular at the time. Okay, so my next story about dogs is actually Rowdy the dog. He was an unofficial lifeguard mascot in the late 40s. So Rowdy kind of rolled up to the beach as a stray dog here in Hermosa in the 1940s, and he ended up getting adopted kind of by the Hermosa Beach lifeguards. This dog was very accident prone, and I think everybody here has had one of those pets. You just have this one dog or cat that you're always at the vet with. So in his lifetime, in the paper, there were stories about him he fell asleep under a car and got run over. He was out on the beach and his ears were kind of flopped open and he got burnt real bad one day and had to go to the vet. He fell off the roof of the lifeguard station. He chased cars barking, which a lot of dogs like doing, and broke a leg. The lifeguards blamed it on new signals that the city installed at pier in Hermosa Avenue. They said if they hadn't put those signals in, this wouldn't have happened. And every time he got hurt, the lifeguards would kind of look at each other and go, oh, what do we do? Is this the end for Rowdy? And they'd always just gather enough money to take him to the vet and get the poor guy fixed up. At one point, he even stole a roast from a local store from a local restaurant in town and dragged it down to the lifeguard headquarters. The lifeguard said they kind of cut off the parts that he was eating and they finished it and they ended up paying his tab at the restaurant. So they just always got the money together to pay his bills and keep him alive. So all in all, though, he lived a nice life on the beach, playing with kids, sneaking food from picnic baskets. He passed away in 1950, though he had a huge obituary on the front page of the Daily Breeze, actually. And in all the articles, he was described as a brown and white bird dog or pointer, so I kind of fed in those descriptions. This is an AI-generated image. I did feed it into ChatGPT. I was kind of curious what it would kind of come up with, so I gave it all the descriptions from the articles and said, okay, give me this dog at the beach. And I was kind of surprised it gave me a German short-hair pointer, which definitely fits the description and the personality when I go back through the articles. So German short-hair pointers were bred in Germany in the 1800s. They were kind of bred to be like an all-purpose dog. They said, we want a dog that can hunt big game, retrieve small game, kind of go through low and heavy cover, go through the water, and also be a family companion that just looks really attractive. And they came to the U.S. for breeding in the 1920s. World War II, again, similar to the German Shepherd, almost brought about near extinction. Breeders sent their dogs out to breed with stock of neighboring countries, and many of the GIs actually brought them back to the States to live with their families. It's kind of, and the word pointer comes from for a lot of hunting dogs because they point. They pick up a paw, they have their tail in the air, and then they point with their nose where the game is. If you don't know that, kind of another fun fact for you. So, and to this day, they're very popular dogs. They're very busy. They're very industrious. They need a lot of work. A lot of people still use them for hunting, and they're still the top winning breed in competitive hunting today. Okay, and my last one is actually about horses, because I'm actually going to read you this article from the paper, and it's about a horse getting arrested. Okay. It was 1:30 in the morning when a telephone call came into the police headquarters. What year we were in 1925, so man, picture, 1925. An agitated voice complained that a horse was tearing up the front lawn near 1121 East 7th Street and asked police headquarters to do something about it. I'm kind of impressed that in that year they had a front lawn. I kind of thought it was just all sand. Well, I guess we can arrest him for disturbing the peace, offered Officer Everett Cassell. Guess so, agreed Officer Arthur Marshall. Accordingly, they took the police car and went in search of the horse. By systematically following a trail of wreckage, the horse was soon located, and then, in the words of the prophet, the fun began. You're under arrest, announced Officer Cassell, and in lieu of a pair of handcuffs, a rope was tied to the horse and the police car. But the starter buzzed and the motor roared in vain. The delinquent braced 4 feet and sat down. said Officer Cassell, suddenly inspired. He climbed aboard and said, "Giddy up!" The horse decided it was a game of ring around the rosy and proceeded in more or less hysterical circles. "Tie him up and lead him in," suggested Marshall. "I gotta get the car back to the station and call someone for help." Some 40 feet of tow rope from the police car was connected with the horse and supported mainly by Officer Cassell, who firmly led his reluctant prisoner from 7th Street and Camino Real to jail. "Well, now we got him. What'll we do with him?" wondered Cassell. "Orders is to book all prisoners. We gotta wait the desk sergeant." "All right, help me get this big dumbbell in the station." Marshall solemnly woke the sergeant, Tommy Allen, with an announcement. A prisoner was waiting in custody of Officer Cassell and couldn't be put in jail until properly booked. "What's the charge?" grunted Allen, hurrying out into the headquarters, dimly illuminated by the night lamp. Without looking up, he opened his book and started the usual questions. "What's your name?" he demanded. An explosion of laughter and the slam of a hurriedly shut door greeting him. Later, the following record was entered. Found, horse, 1:30 a.m., April 6, 1925. Value, $1.75. Description, color brown, long tail, 4 legs, 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. Good horse for the fix he is in. Turned over to custody of the desk sergeant on duty at 2:10 a.m., T. Allen. The horse was kept under arrest until noon when Eugene Dench called and claimed the prodigal. The prisoner was released on parole to Dench. So this is kind of a comical story, and there are actually quite a few great stories about horses in town. This really wasn't that long ago. Stories of horses as pets, but also as building block teams who helped build this town. You know, they would drag supplies from the train stop through the sand that helped build some of the first homes here. If you want to hear another funny story about a horse, you can go online and watch an interview with Sonny Vardaman, who grew up in town. He has a great story about a horse named Bill from his childhood. But I just thought it would be fun to share some of the more kind of fun stories about animals in town. And to this day, we still see a lot of drama in the paper about our pets, don't we? All right, next up we have, who is next? That's over. Okay, we have the fabulous Laura from the Easy Reader. Conversation, I am curious.
Hi, wow. I don't know the last time I did any public speaking, so it's really great to see familiar faces I'll be seeing repeatedly throughout town. Yeah, this came across my desk as an interesting story to do, so I'm really happy that the Hermosa Beach Review is now digitized, because I would absolutely be using this for hopefully a future article. But everyone remembers the counterculture heydays of Insomniac and jazz stories at the Lighthouse, but there's a confiscation and censorship story that happened at the Fox Hermosa Theater, which was then the Bijou Theater, which was now a Tuesday. So for context, there was a Swedish film called I Am Curious Yellow, erotic in nature, but you should know a little background on the Swedish erotica films. The sexual liberalism of Sweden was, pretty ahead of its time. In 1955, they were the first country to mandate sexual education in schools. Films like Ingmar Bergman's Summer with Monica was a huge hit that kind of got that ball rolling on erotic films. And this was competing with the Hollywood's Hays Code at the time. So think twin beds, gangsters get their comeuppance. So this was pretty progressive for them. A lot of erotic exports were coming out of Sweden then. And it's funny, I thought to myself, am I really going to get in front of a crowd for the first time and speak about Swedish erotica film? Well, I just met Polly Schneider. She's dubbed the patron saint of Hermosa, and she made me feel a lot better when she told me her favorite Hermosa Beach story involves a dildo warehouse. So I think you guys can handle a little Swedish erotica. Is anyone Swedish in the crowd? Thank you. Vilgo Schroman, the director of this film. So this film follows the story of Lena Nyman, who was dating the director at the time. a rebellious young woman in 1960s Sweden as she confronts social and political realities and explores her sexual identity. Roger Ebert gave it 1 star, with part of his review being, if your bag is shelling out several bucks to witness Alice, flaccid, then I Am Curious Yellow is the flick for you. But if you hope for anything else, that the movie might be erotic, for example, or even funny, forget it. It's a dog, a real dog. So Jamie, you might like this film? I'd like to include this photo, perhaps the only reason I'm really doing this presentation in front of everyone. I'd like to think she was inspired coming out of a Manhattan theater after watching I Am Curious Yellow. She finally had enough of the paparazzi. This is her right after she did a jiu-jitsu move on a paparazzi guy, so perhaps it's inspiring. A little bit of background. Hermosa's moral panic, narcotics, pornography was an issue that people were dealing with. Sex education, that was big. They didn't know if they wanted to have it mandatory in schools or not. I even found this clip in the Hermosa Beach Review. Offending advertisements can now be stopped by new laws. Smut smugglers. You were getting some bad advertisements in the mail. But on December 29th, the Hermosa Beach Review later reported that the Hermosa Beach police raided the Fox Theater in Hermosa, grabbing all films and stills of the film. Later that evening, though, they raised the price to $250 and had a sold-out show. So sex sells, Rosalie Foreman said. There's part I wanted to read for you too. When asked how a movie rates the significant term pornographic, the Los Angeles County Chief Deputy District Attorney Lynn Compton stated it had to be without any redeeming social value. When asked who made this judgment, he stated writers, professional critics, professional actors, and members of the clergy. The Redondo Reflex also covered it a day sooner, and I know how that feels. My colleagues always beating me to it. But I wanted to read this line from here. Officer Kavanaugh, who was responsible for the raid with a warrant, bought a ticket, $250, and viewed the film 2 days before Christmas. He took meticulous notes on December 23rd and cited the film for 4 major sexual acts, obviously and candidly expressed. And any Gowanus members in here tonight? Yeah. I was able to find on the internet a letter signed to the mayor and city council thanking the chief of police for confiscating the film. So thanks. As members of Kiwanis International, we join with our parent organization in one of our objectives for 1970 an effective ban on pornography. We feel that Chief Berlin and District Attorney Younger's action was particularly appropriate, affecting, as it did, a neighborhood theater during Christmas vacation. Supreme Court ruled that this film was not legally obscene, so it's kind of interesting that there were still raids going on Hermosa Theater. But the court agreed the film had artistic, political, and social value despite its sexual content, which later on helped First Amendment protections for cinema. Roger Ebert, and we'll finish this out, perhaps the legal defense should have given us warning. The usual parade of literary movie critics stood up in court and testified, A, that the movie had redeeming social merit, and B, that speaking as a healthy adult, honest judge, it didn't do anything for me. That's easy to believe. I Am Curious Yellow is not merely not erotic, it is anti-erotic. 2 hours of this movie will drive thoughts of sex out of your head for weeks. See the picture in my 2 minutes. But this is definitely a story that, because the Hermosa Beach Review is now digitized, the projectionist, who is still around and has this story and would get copies again to show again and again, can't get him to call me back. So if you know Clayton Shepard III, tell him I'm looking for him. But because Hermosa Beach Review is digitized, these stories can be told. And, Officer Mark?
like the new seats? You can hold you captive a little longer now. So this is Volume 1, Number 1, March 1, 1907. Just about 6 weeks after the city was founded, the review started. So it's an eye chart up here, so I'll read a few choice articles from here. The Hermosa Land and Water Company will immediately commence the construction of a new well adjoining the old one for purpose of supplying the demand that we made up on the company this summer. Hermosa does grow. Here's one from our first mayor pro tem, Bernard Hiss. When you're in need of a teamwork or transport of any kind, call on Bernard Hiss, proprietor of the Hermosa Livery Feed and Sales Stable. So basically, Bernard Hiss was our mayor pro tem, our first mayor pro tem, but he also had, he was a mule skinner. So he had a team of mules, and he was responsible for leveling the sand dunes where the streets were being laid out and helping put down the boardwalks. A force of men have been at work the greater part of this week, making repairs on their pleasure pier. Some of the timbers have become encrusted with barnacles and will be renewed so that the strength of the structure will not be affected. So we had a wooden pier and they had to protect it. So back in the day, you'd get a lot of articles like this. A very pleasant surprise party was given Mr. and Mrs. Mullet Wednesday evening by a number of their friends. An enjoyable evening was passed by playing games, music, and many other pastimes. The room was artistically decorated with white and pink carnations and calla lilies, probably some from the Japanese farmers. And refreshments consisting of sandwiches, lemonade, and cake were served later in the evening. And besides the host and hostess, those present were, and they give a whole list of names. So I think it's interesting when you go back to this time frame. We didn't have iPhones and internet and Facebook and all the other social media. So papers were kind of the social media of the day. And the review, and here it says in the paper here, it says, the review is under many obligations to Mrs. S.A. Bean, the obliging postmistress, so she was the postmistress of our little city, for official and other information. So somehow she was kind of the conduit for getting a lot of personal information fed into the paper. So we had a bathhouse in town, and I found this article. I thought it was this advertisement. I thought it was pretty interesting. But you were assured that when you went to the bathhouse, you'd have sanitary bathing. The suits and towels were sterilized for 6 hours, so you can be safe and be clean. So at that time in the 1920s, what was that? 1918. That article is. You couldn't bring your own swim trunks or bathing suit to a bathhouse. You had to rent one from the bathhouse. They wanted to make sure that it was sterilized and clean for you to wear. They didn't want your filth coming in. But I found that picture. I thought there's kind of the time frame we're looking at, and we're transitioning there into shorter and shorter bathing suits. So some of you remember the 70s, Rigo sandals. That's when he opened in 77. Hippie clothes, bongs, pipes, sandals. That's the place to go if you need those type of products. And the Spot, which opened in 1977. Rico's opened in 66. The spot opened in '77, and it's arguably the oldest vegetarian restaurant in Los Angeles County. No, it got closed, but Rick Koenig has resurrected the sign that was on the spot. So we have that neon sign preserved for generations. Pardon?
What have you heard?
So this is the last issue. It ended in 1979. It's kind of a sad issue. There wasn't anything really memorable on here. It says, although the 70s, in contrast to the tumultuous 60s, has been often referred to as the decade of apathy. I don't remember the 70s being apathetic, but I guess the review thought it was. And another article of note is that in May or June, the commercial enterprise will be open for business. They're referring to the Manhattan Village Mall. It'll have a Buffalo's, a Bullock's, and 8 movie theaters, plus many other features. So that was, I don't think any of those stores are there anymore, Buffalo's or Bullock's. No. Anyway, that was the last issue. Thank you. I didn't read the memo that I was supposed to be more detailed and so Mike Horn is going to come up and talk a little bit here. He's with our development committee, and he has a few words to say. Eric.
Thanks, Mark. I serve on the museum's development committee, which is a funny euphemistic term for people that need to ask for money. And so that's what I'm here to do. I have a question for everyone here. Raise your hand, please, if you're a donor to the museum. Okay, a lot of hands. Now raise your hand if you paid $10 to get in tonight. Okay, you are all donors to the museum, and we appreciate that. But we do have asks for those that are in a position to give more, to consider making a larger donation to the museum, as we have a growing staff, growing programming, and eventually new space needs that we're going to be raising capital to move into. We need the generosity of the community to make sure that the museum is on stable footing for the years to come. And so we would really appreciate anyone that's able to give. We have, I think on another slide here, we have some ways to give electronically. If anyone is willing to join me, I'm going to pull out my phone in just a moment and make a donation. I'd be honored if anyone would join me. If anyone has questions about the ongoing programming, about the museum, what the funds are being used for, please reach out to a member of the development committee, Greg, any of our awesome staff, Jamie, Ryan. We can fill you in on all of the awesome work that's going on. We really appreciate your generosity. And with that, I don't know if anyone wants to come back up if there's a Q&A portion of this, right?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Eric, and thank you to all of our speakers tonight. Great. Very much appreciate it. Without further ado, if anyone, since we have nice comfy seats, as Mark mentioned, if anyone has questions for anybody on the panel, feel free to, sure, please.
I wondered if the sidewalk outside of Greco's, I wonder if that had been preserved, because I remember how big it was.
Yes. I believe it was, yes. We got an expert opinion.
It's actually been like a problem lately. A lot of the plaques have, I mean, the bronze is really valuable. Like there are a lot of stories locally in the South Bay of plaques being stolen. That was one that people were slowly starting to chip out. So actually two of our volunteers here reached out to the city and asked if the city would proactively remove it. We do actually have the plaque here.
Question, sure, Bob?
Yeah, Ryan, you mentioned that in order to access the Hermosa Review, you either have to come here or pay to use the newspapers.com.
That would be correct, yeah.
From my understanding, unless it has changed, you can directly access the UCR website for free by Googling California digital newspapers, and it's at the University of California, Riverside, and they list, I've accessed 6 months ago, I haven't done it recently, the Hermosa Review. You can designate what newspapers.
Is it already up there?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know initially they said that we had to go through a pending period and they weren't sure exactly how long it was gonna take for copyright, that after so many years, it would be available on their website, so that's great.
Well, I don't know, when I sent you the ads about the racially restrictive covenants from the Hermosa Review, and I found those on the California digital newspaper, so I don't know if it's there in full or not. I haven't tried it recently, but just to let
Yeah,
people
maybe
know.
some issues are available, like, that are of a certain age, but I don't know if the full one is gonna be available until we go through like the pending period for copyright, and then actually it will be free to access.
I think you might want to stay up here with me. I keep calling you back. Sure, Cheryl.
So, you were saying we come here and look at it with a specific request, or do you have like a designated monitor to come and just browse?
Not a designated monitor yet, although that's a great idea. For now, you can come in during our open hours, and odds are 9 times out of 10, one of us will be free and able to help you out. But if you want to guarantee that you have a time slot, I would recommend a research request, and that can be done on our website as well.
Oh,
Thank you.
you can also access newspapers.com for free at most public libraries.
Thank you, Bob. There you have it. Sure, yes. Yep, go.
Why would the newspaper close?
Ooh, that's a good question that I don't know the specific answer to. Mark, anything in the last edition there? Well, that is a great research question and a great thing that we have that resource digitized for to check out now. Thank you.
There's a guy named Paul, and I can't remember his last name, that had a heart attack and died. That was part of the reason.
Plus,
Free newspaper?
Yeah.
you had to subscribe to it. I remember the cost at one point in time, but over the 70-year run, I'm sure it changed. Weekly paper every Thursday, though, throughout its run.
It's interesting how it went from being, the first few issues were only a couple pages, and then as time went on, they got longer and longer with the more advertisements.
More illustrations.
I always enjoy all the illustrations of the old advertisements for produce and fashion and things like that. It's really fun to look through. Jim?
Part of the reason, well, they produced their own paper, they printed it on site initially, so that, and they had a big space in that. But then along came something like the Easy Reader, I think it's called. Which went out to have it done at a larger press house, so they didn't have to maintain the equipment and all that.
I actually remember that they printed right where parking lot C is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've got we've got a printing, at least one printing expert here I know of. Adam?
I'm curious if you can pull up the aerial or the opening photograph on the flower farms to just determine exactly, I'm curious exactly where it was or where.
It looked like Pier Avenue, part of it.
Did I miss
Now,
it?
is
Sorry.
that title? Okay.
So,
That's 5 points, that's near, it's 26th Street right there.
Yes. So in our collection in Past Perfect, the description says that this is PCH right here, and then 22nd Street. So I believe this is the general area. And where the family farm was around, I believe, 7th through 9th Street, which is just around right here by us.
What are those, there's like barns?
Yes, so you can see the rolling hills right here, and this is the tree-lined street where families would plant their flowers, and then we got some housing by the sand dunes.
I wonder, is that Ardmore that's like, it would be,
Right here?
yeah.
Might have been
That
the
one looks like
This-
maybe a flower farm, right? Yeah, right
here.
there, yeah. Because that's where I had heard it was also at the trailer park,
There
which
was
kind of
no.
looks like that opening photograph, like the back on this side of the dune. Your presentation, I don't know if anybody knows. Okay, thank you.
That's been Avenue right there, First Street.
Right.
We also have.
Is it okay if I go back to the postcard?
Sure.
So we got this postcard recently, and this isn't of the Mayano family, but it's actually another carnation farm. And this is the first of the school in Hermosa Beach Ocean View, and we're looking west. So this is like the field behind where State Cross was.
Right, so that would be kind of where the trail, the valley. Okay, that's interesting.
And that's like really a distinctive building. When you look at the aerials, that school always sticks out. There was nothing else built like that. We were looking at some aerials earlier that we think were taken later than this illustration, because you can see where that kind of, it almost looks round, right? That round building, there are more structures kind of what we think are adjacent to it, kind of up behind it. So it almost is as if they potentially were kind of building more structures as they continued to have their farms.
That's such a great shot.
It is really beautiful. Any of your questions? And if you want to look at more aerial photos, there are a lot on our website, so